Welcome to the Wellness Amazon podcast. This is a podcast for highly sensitive people, people that have high intuition and are just in tune with themselves and the outer world. Come and listen to multiple different high spectrum subjects and just peek behind the curtain. But I warn you, once you peek behind the curtain, you can never go back. Have fun. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of the Wellness Amazon podcast. Today, a very special guest and very dear to my heart, Kristine from Texas, from the beautiful, amazing state of Texas, who is a registered dietitian, who is a yoga teacher and a certified health coach, and has a wealth of knowledge for us today. She's been in this field of dietetic works for over 7 years and still works in that field today and shares her expertise every day with people who need her advice and who need help with their health. And today we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition and supplements and what we can do to mitigate those, not only HSP, I call it side effects, even though, like I said, we discussed this plenty, that being an HSP is a superpower, but every once in a while it comes with things like overthinking, being overstimulated, anxiety, all these things. And again, this is not any advice from your physician here. We are just sharing information and knowledge and probably experiences too. So welcome, Kristine, to the podcast. Hi.
Thank you so much for having me, Melina. Very excited to be doing that. This is actually my second podcast I'm a part of, so maybe that's my new thing I'm going to be doing moving forward. No, just kidding. But very excited. Love your previous podcast you have done so far, and so being a guest on your podcast is such an honor. So very excited to kind of help support some of your listeners in regards to nutrition, because there's some tips and tricks you can do in order to navigate some of those things that might come up for people that are highly sensitive. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. And like you said, it's so interesting how these things that come with being an HSP can really sometimes be connected. Sometimes they don't have to be. They can spiral. We're going to talk about some things that are more like a subcategory of those things as well. For example, for me, it's always the extreme decision fatigue that comes in that maybe some people might recognize too, that comes with being overstimulated. But we're going to dive all into that. So I really appreciate that you take the time today to talk to us to do that. And yeah, you should be in more podcasts because we cannot share this stuff enough. Totally agree with that. Before we even jump in, do you have any connections with all of this stuff that is really seems like the main focus of this podcast lately, the HSP?
Well, I know you, so I know that's something that, you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I love how you say it's a superpower. I feel like any struggles we have in some sort of disguise sometimes, can be superpowers. So diving into it and learning more about, for me, knowing you as a friend as well prior, but really listening to this podcast, very interesting, to dive deeper into your experience with that too. So I had worked with a couple before that they were also high sensitive people. So just it's learning, right? If you don't work together or experience that on a level yourself, just kind of always be open and curious. Curiosity is always a big thing. And I don't think I have anybody else in my close environment, but, we all have our struggles. I struggle with anxiety too, which I know is not the same thing, but, it's all mood things are a normal thing in every day for everybody. So, hearing about a lot more because it's talked about now. It's like depression, or anxiety, all those things. And I love that it's out in the open and you can better understand what people go through. And even if you don't experience yourself, you never know 100% if you don't experience something yourself, but you can be more empathetic about it and help support in any way, that you can. So really love that it's more out in the open. But even like researching a little bit for our podcast as well, it's just so interesting how where some people might not even think how food can relate, to mood and depression and anxiety and all those things. And other things, and I know we talk about that today too, is like emotional eating, is a huge thing too. We never consider
Hmm.
necessarily with if any mood things or, we'll just, yeah, don't even, we'll just do it and don't even say, okay, it's related to anything emotional. And so, yeah, it's a lot we can talk about, I feel like. So try to
Yeah.
keep it kind of to the highlights. And then, of course, if you feel like if your listeners say, hey, this is something I really would like a little bit more deep dive, I'm more than happy to come and visit you again on your podcast.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. Yeah. If someone has comments here or questions, you probably know where to find me by now and say, hey, this is something I think would be beneficial for a lot of people to go deeper into it. Absolutely. Um, and I think what you said, I really appreciate that you shared that with us too about your anxiety, because I don't really think it is necessarily by the time you have it that it's important on how you got there. You know what I mean? If you're highly sensitive and you have anxiety because you're overstimulated, or if you have anxiety for some other reasons,
Right.
you're in it now, and now you have to figure out how to deal with it. So, yeah, I feel like this episode's going to be beneficial for a whole wide range of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Agree. Agree.
So, from your expertise, what are the connections of anything mental health? So, when I say mental health, I mean like everything that kind of happens in our brain or that we think happens in our brain, and nutrition. How are they connected?
So the quality of the diet, right, is kind of like what we're diving into right now. So how can that affect, how we feel overall? Because it's very interesting if you look at it. You have nutrients like omega 3s, so those are the things you find in like nuts and fatty fish, stuff like that. B vitamins, iron, magnesium, all those different things play a huge role in the production of neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, right? And oftentimes, like,
Mhm.
dopamine is kind of that where people, with anxiety and then some other um, things they deal with where they want this dopamine fix, and we can get that sometimes over food, right? And so all these different things regulate mood and anxiety. And so, if you don't give your body those things that it actually needs to regulate those better, and I don't want to necessarily say being deficient in something, but that can make like a huge difference. Or if you look at, blood sugar, right? So if we eat, for example, anything that's like really high in sugar, it's like if you just take a tablespoon of sugar and eat it, right? It gives you like this immense blood sugar spike, like really fast, but it also drops just as fast. So you kind of crash, and that can lead to mood swings, right? Because you feel irritable, you feel tired after you kind of have that crash. So that plays a huge role. And so, if you have stable blood sugar, you usually have more consistent energy. You are able to emotionally regulate a little bit better. And so, what you want to look at is like, balance your meals so that that doesn't happen. And then there's also that, and that's, I don't want to say a newer area of research, but this gut brain axis as well as the microbiome, there's so much more that we can find out about that. So, if you look at the gut microbiome, so that also influences brain health, right? So, if you look at about 70 to 90% of serotonin is actually produced in the gut, and that is one of the
Mm.
mood regulating neurotransmitters. And so a diet that's like rich in fiber, probiotics, fermented foods, so think like yogurt, sauerkraut, stuff like that, they support kind of that healthy gut bacteria. It kind of broadens your microbiome, I guess you could say. And that's also linked, looking at research studies, to lower rates of anxiety and depression. So again, it's kind of all interrelated. And yeah, that's one of the things, well, we'll talk about nutrition today.
Yeah. Wow. I think it's really cool, and most people do not realize they call the gut the second brain. And it's so underestimated. I'm so glad you talk about that because, yeah, we forget how all these little tiny, that's how I envision them, right? These little tiny bacteria are hopping around in our gut and they keep it happy. And some of them are bad, and everything needs to be in a balance between good and bad. So, and I do have to say, when I eat quote unquote crappy or not as good as I could, most of the time that's connected to some events or super high stress times, or you're traveling or something. Um, I really don't have as high of a threshold for stimuli than I have when I take care of myself. So that's it. It has to be a connection with that because I can feel it almost immediately within like 1 to 2 days. That I just cannot endure certain things the way I can endure them if I eat right.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but being a highly sensitive person, you probably also more, do you feel like you have also more body awareness? So you're noticing things a lot faster than others,
Hmm.
right? So others have a lot higher threshold, eating, like you said, crappy food and not really paying attention how they feel. And I feel like, for you, it's kind of not the opposite, but you're very in tune with your body and you kind of noticing immediately like those shifts, if you're not feeling yourself correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And stress goes into my gut immediately almost.
Mhm.
That's where it manifests. It's almost like food going down. So it starts in my throat, then it goes down in my stomach, and then it manifests in my gut. It's almost like you would like when you drink something really hot and you can feel that going. This is how stress goes down for me too. It
Yeah.
just follows the path kind of. Um, which is kind of weird and kind of scary, but also very enlightening because it's like, okay, you're also ingesting the stress, you're ingesting the bad energy, and it has to go somewhere.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, for people with irritable bowel syndrome, it's not the food, it's the stress, right? Because like you said, they're manifesting everything in their gut. And so once you kind of work on, again, on that gut brain axis, and connection, you can, I mean, there's also research on that, how much of that difference that can make. I forgot what the exact percentage is, but it was amazing, just kind of working on that, how to manage the stress and, I guess kind of going into the meditation piece, but it was interesting. I think it's Nerva is the app, what it's called. It's like a 3-month kind of program. It's a subscription, and every day you do like a meditation, but it talks about your insides and your gut. And at the beginning, I was like, wow, what is that? But very interesting. And I feel like, talking with you about that a little more and how much more aware you're of your body, I feel like how that much of
Yeah.
a big difference it can make, if you would kind of be using that, if that's something you would need to do, right? So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I love yoga nidra so much because there's that whole sequence about, left pinky, right pinky, and it's just like you don't think about those body parts mindfully throughout the day,
Right.
probably ever, unless something hurts, of course. And it's just yeah, that body awareness and also that appreciation that something is there. Um, I also know that, and I think you wanted to talk about that anyway, is when you're an HSP and you have so many things coming at you that you need to process and you absorb all of that information when you're with people or in a restaurant. To me, it is very hard to actually focus on my food because I have so much stuff going on. And sometimes I don't remember eating. I want to enjoy that meal and I want to enjoy the flavors, but it's hard to look at the food, smell the food, taste the food, chew the food, feel the food in my mouth and listening to 25 conversations around me and the music and the TVs and all that stuff. And unfortunately, in those scenarios, a lot of times the food experience falls short first. It's the first thing that goes. So I don't chew it correctly. I don't even know really what I'm eating. I have to like pull myself out and mindfully be like, does this taste good? Do I like this? Because I don't even know if I'm not paying attention to it.
Yeah, yeah. And with the distraction, a lot of people struggle, right? Because they're on their phone while they eat, they look on Facebook, they do social media, stuff like that. And so I've been working with a lot of, people and patients on, okay, let's just eat and concentrate on your food, right? But for you, you have the extra stimuli that come in that you're not able to tune out, right? Because it's not like a phone you can put away. You're in a restaurant, so what do you do? So I can't even imagine how sometimes that must be just frustrating because you have like I don't know, a special dinner with your husband for anniversary and, you pick out this amazing restaurant and you're not even able to really tune into the food. But I mean, with that being said, you maybe then take something else from that experience. Maybe if it's not the food, but, just having a conversation or even listening to a conversation. So yeah, just whatever you can get out of that experience, even if it's not the food. But yeah, I can't even imagine how difficult that must be sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And you were talking about key nutrients. I would love to like summarize that one more time, maybe, because that was amazing.
Yeah, definitely. So key nutrients, if you look especially at mental health. So I made a little list and maybe that's something you will share in your show notes as well. So like I mentioned at the very beginning is kind of those omega-3 fatty acids that we say, are really beneficial for the brain. They also have anti-inflammatory support. And so we're looking at fatty fish, like I mentioned, like salmon, mackerels, but also if you look at more plant-based, you have flax seeds, you have walnuts to really kind of get those key ingredients for the omega-3s. Another one that really can support is the B vitamins. So they're kind of help with the neurotransmitter synthesis. And looking at some sources you can find, it's leafy greens, it's eggs, it's legumes, it's kind of fortified cereal. They kind of add those B vitamins in there a lot of times. So that's another good one. Then also one that I think a lot of people probably know is magnesium, right? We always say, okay, magnesium is kind of the relaxation kind of mineral. It helps with stress response. And even I know a lot of people do supplements, especially at night to kind of help with sleep. But if you really want to look at food, I'm always for food first, right? Because we just know
Yeah.
our bodies can absorb that the best. And sometimes you buy a supplement over the counter and you don't really know what we call bioavailability. So meaning
Hmm.
how much the body actually absorbs of it. So we don't really know that when we buy a supplement over the counter. However, with that being said, if you're deficient in anything, because we get to vitamin D here in just a minute, of course, if you need to supplement to make sure you
Yeah.
don't have a deficiency, definitely do that. With talking about with your physician. So again, sorry, circling back to magnesium. So you find it in spinach, black beans, almonds, and here's your ticket to eat sweets because dark chocolate also
Oh
has
yeah.
magnesium in it. And kind of talking about sometimes you need that, even like this. I don't want to categorize it into emotional eating, but sometimes you kind of want that sweet. So now here I'm giving you the free ticket to, hey, have some dark chocolate, to help with adding some magnesium to your diet. Then we also have zinc. So zinc helps with cognitive function. It helps also with mood regulation. And so we're looking at pumpkin seeds, we're looking at beef, we're looking at chickpeas. Then come into the vitamin D that I said, of course, we all know we're getting this outside from the sunlight. Also, again, helps with mood regulation. But then there's a lot of fortified foods as well that have vitamin D. Like look at, I think it's milk, right? Yes, milk,
Yeah.
fatty fish as well. And then the last one is tryptophan, which is a precursor of serotonin. And that one you find in turkey, dairy, oats, and bananas. So I gave you like this gigantic list now, and you're like, wow, I'm probably now already overwhelmed, right? So because now I have to make sure to include all those. However, just to make it easy, and I have some practical tips as well, wide variety of foods gives you everything you need, right? The more variety you have, the better it is. And that makes it easy in that sense already, where you say, okay, let me eat whole foods, get as much color of the rainbow into my day. And so you don't have to start overthinking how to add all these different things now into your diet. But I feel like it's good to know and kind of pay attention a little bit to what are maybe some of those foods that can help support.
Yeah, that's so good to know. And it's funny with the tryptophan because I think that's the running joke about Thanksgiving when everybody eats a lot of turkey
Yeah.
and everybody falls asleep after dinner. It really does. It really does. If you have, I don't know, to me, when I have turkey and potatoes together, it's like sleepy time an hour later.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the magnesium? Because I know a lot of people, me included, get so overwhelmed. Like when you were talking about supplementation and how that can be stressful, finding the right supplement. And magnesium is just so everybody has a different opinion about it and which magnesium to take and gel, cream, spray, bath oil, whatever, powders, drinks. There's I have never seen any other supplement on this earth that has a wider variety on how to take it than magnesium. It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you for asking that question. And I wouldn't necessarily say there's a best one to take because it also depends on the person. Just like you said, some people don't like swallow pills, so those are out. Some people rather like it, as a little stir it in the water at night, drink it, or really focusing on the food factor, to make sure to get enough magnesium. So if that's something of interest, I can definitely look at for relaxation because again, magnesium could also be used for, if you have some digestive issues or constipation, there's a form you use for that. If you want to relax, there's a form of that. It's just in general, you want to supplement for, now it's slipping my mind what else it supports with, but I can definitely look up what's the recommendation for the one that kind of helps with the, well, because sleep, I feel like sleep and just the relaxation might be a little bit different too.
Hmm.
But I can definitely get back on to you on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Um, yeah, and I feel like too, and like as I know you are also in a warmer state with living in Florida and going outside a lot because of the vitamin D, and then I sweat a lot because it's always hot here. So I do have to replenish those electrolytes because I do know if I don't do that, um, you do sweat out the magnesium too because it's part of electrolytes.
Right.
It's so weird to describe because the whole body goes down, like everything feels blah, not just mentally.
Mhm.
Physically, emotionally, nothing is stable anymore when I don't replenish that. And I drink water and water and water. And then sometimes my husband will go, "Mm, did you replenish any electrolytes today?" Oh, yeah, no, I didn't. Thank you for reminding me. So, yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned electrolytes. I mean, there again, that's also like a deep, bucket full of all these different options. It's also important to kind of see what you're looking for. I always say, okay, let's find the ones that have the least additives and preservatives to it, because again, that could
Mhm.
also influence your mood. I know you have maybe some recommendations there. Is that what you like? And, you feel like that might be something for your listeners to try. But then also looking at, okay, because I know sodium is also a big part of electrolytes, and that's something that people that, have some heart issues might want to be
Mhm.
cautious and talk to their doctor as well, because it might, mess up their blood pressure. And then I don't know how that influences, the mood again, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So definitely, if you feel like supplementation, with electrolytes is important and you feel like it would be helpful, I would definitely check in with your physician as well.
Yeah, and I don't know how other people are feeling about this because again, I hear a lot of mixed reviews about supplementation. I make it a ritual because some people say, "Oh, but it's so many things that I have to take." And it's like, well, first of all, I got it tested to know what I am actually deficient in and what I'm not, or not even deficient, but it's not optimal. It's not on the optimal level. It's kind of
Yeah.
in the okay range, but it's definitely not enough to thrive. And I really do make it a ritual in the morning before I even have my coffee to lay out for that day what I need and and those things change with my cycle. I don't always take an iron supplement, but on the cycle, I take an iron supplement because I know I'm low in iron anyways. So that's something that my doctor recommended and said. And I go to an osteopath. So she did the whole shebang when she ordered lab tests. And she did tell me what minerals to take and what minerals even to avoid because of other things that are blocking things for me, because I took 2 Brazil nuts a day for my selenium, and
Mhm.
she told me to do that 1 week on and 1 week off because she said that can suppress your zinc absorption or whatever it was. I'm like, oh, okay, didn't know that. Definitely talk to your provider about, and not blindly just going, because I see a lot of people that just take a handful of stuff. And I was one of them. Just every day, and you don't even
I
know if
think we
that's
all at
something.
some point have been like, yeah, that's just,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. So that's super helpful. The other thing is too, and I know you are really skilled about behavior with food and not just what to eat, but how we are
Right.
actually doing all of that.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, the first thing for me to go when I'm overstimulated, I have decision fatigue, and I am not capable anymore on just that. Just making a decision is absolutely exhausting to me. Um, Even just thinking about what to make for dinner, it's just a non. It has to be now. It has to be quick and easy because I don't want to deal with anything anymore. Um, and the other thing is emotional eating, for sure, when I want to get out of a situation. Because like what you just said about like the serotonin and the dopamine, right? I'm trying to get that now from food. My body is craving this, but doesn't produce it itself. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about
Yeah, sure. So let me start with the first thing you mentioned. So kind of that being overwhelmed, right, and having that extreme decision fatigue. So first, I would look at, how often does that happen, right? If that's once all blue moon, sometime, and you're really then diving into those foods that are not optimal, totally fine. But if you notice, okay, this is like more frequently, and how can I kind of work around that? Honestly, meal prep, right? Take a
that.
day in your week, prepare some things. It doesn't have to be like your whole week planned out and then made up, and all you need to do is take it out of the fridge, unless that works for you. I mean, that would be amazing, right? If you all could
Yeah,
do that. Um, However, if like, okay, usually this occurs, like at night, or I don't really find a pattern to it, or maybe it's just something that in that moment I feel like, it could be just kind of a snack thing, kind of look at those patterns that you notice there, and then kind of in that sense start working backwards and say, okay, I know this is usually like a weekly during the week kind of evening thing where I'm just tired and I just can't make any decisions. So, meal prep on a day, maybe on a weekend day, just having a couple things on hand you can pull out of the freezer or that are already ready to go in the fridge, or something that you buy at the store that is not too much processed. I
mhm,
always say easiest thing is buy one of those salad kits. However, have your own salad dressing so you are in control.
yeah,
What's in your dressing could be just, olive oil and vinegar. Perfect. I mean, that's all I need. And then, yes, that's probably not the most optimal one, but get a rotisserie chicken,
yeah,
because then you have your protein right there. Yes, sometimes there's a little bit of additives in there, but it's fast. You get your protein. You have the salad with that. You have your healthy oils if you make your own dressing. Perfect, quick and easy. I mean, that takes you what? Prep 5 minutes, not even that.
yeah.
And it's in your fridge ready to just pull out, and you don't really have to think about it. And so, talking about fridge, also put kind of those fast options that you have available in the front. So you can, if you open up the fridge or the pantry, whatever that looks like, you can see it. So you don't even have
Mhm,
to, just this extra step. Wait, where do I have that? Right. And then like, oh, I don't think I have anything. And then just, everything breaks apart. So kind of having something ready to go, and even if it's just a snack for dinner,
Mm-hmm.
whatever works, whatever is fast. It might be some hard-boiled eggs, perfect. Get some carrot sticks with it, some hummus, whatever. It doesn't have to be a big meal. Of course, if you have a family and you have smaller kids, and
Mm-hmm.
yes, it all depends on you. So that again is then where that meal prep really comes into play and can support with that.
Yeah. It's so funny because when you were talking, I really I had a chuckle because every time we get home from the beach, if we and we don't do this enough, we don't do enough beach outings, but every time we do this, we're going to go to the store, we're going to get a rotisserie chicken. It's just that's our go-to to just grab
Go.
and go and go home
Yeah.
because we know everybody likes it. And then I do the same thing. Throw one of these beautiful, sometimes these kale salad kits too. Like every
Hmm.
store has it now,
Yeah.
and just throw that and just call it a day.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. All right, and then the second thing you mentioned, so kind of that emotional eating, right? Which I feel like at some point all of us have, in some kind of disguise, maybe. But the first thing with that is kind of mindful eating is the first technique I guess I want to kind of mention. So which like you said, if you're in the restaurant, probably not possible, but if you're at home, kind of, right, just that slowing down, or even when you have kind of that moment where you're like, kind of ravishes, like, what do I do? Just take a little breather, just kind of stop for a minute and evaluate, okay, am I actually hungry, or do I have some type of emotional eat, right? Which might be at the beginning very difficult to differentiate, but even just creating that awareness is the first step, right? So it doesn't have to be necessarily, it doesn't have to have a solution right away, but noticing the moments where that occurs is, the number one. Because if you're never aware of it, there's nothing you can ever do about it. And so then you just kind of, the technique we use for that is called HOLT. So it's HLT. So
Hmm.
practice HOLT before you start eating. So you want to check in, okay, am I hungry? Yes or no? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? So that's kind of four things. I know there's a lot more, right? That could be kind of like sad, or, all these different emotions, but just
Bored,
in the what?
bored.
Yeah, bored. Yes, bored is a huge one, right? But just these four is really enough, because if you already say I'm not hungry, you're like, oh, okay, there's something else going on, right? And so then the next step is to, like, okay, what what is actually going on, and really kind of, like I said, that's the next step, diving into, okay, what am I actually feeling? So like you said, bored, or am I tired? Am I just overstimulated? Again, talking about that. And then after that, kind of, okay, what does my body actually need right now to feed that feeling, what I'm feeling, right? And it's not food,
Mhm.
that it's just a band-aid, right, basically, right? But if you're
Mhm.
bored, hey, what could I do to not be bored, right? I don't have to eat to not be bored. I'm sure there's something else you can do, which is that's an easier one. But if you're like overstimulated, or you're tired, or you're just frustrated, right? Then kind of looking, that's more like where you say, okay, well, sleep if you're tired, right? But if it's more like I'm depressed, I'm angry, I'm like stressed. What is something that can kind of give you that stress release, right? Might it be just breathing? Might it be going on a walk? Might it be talking to a friend on the phone, right? Or just journaling? And there's all these kind of different things you can do. And that's what I was saying. We might need another podcast on that one. So just giving a couple of ideas. So that's the first one, if there's emotional eating. However, that's the moment off, right? But there's also things that can help with avoiding it completely, is to make sure you have balanced meals, so that you always have your protein, your healthy fats, your fiber. So again, going back to maintaining your blood sugar stability, reducing those cravings. And a big one is avoid skipping those meals, right? Like there's intermittent fasting works great for some people. For others, however, it doesn't. So if they don't have breakfast, right, and they're kind of not really listening in and knowing they're hungry, which probably, again, for you, you probably will know you're hungry, but then really helping the body, support the body, and getting that meal right, because that can cause overeating later, and it also can cause to having kind of this after dinner, the snacking, because you're just not
Hmm.
satisfied at all. And so making sure you have those regular meals throughout the days makes a huge difference. It's amazing what difference that can make. I had worked with a patient before, and she never ate breakfast. She was struggling with kind of that overeating, and I said, well, it's just, it can be something small. It can be a yogurt. It can even be just a cheese stick. It can just, something to give your stomach. And we kept kind of building on that. And then, after a month or two, she came back to me and she's like, oh my God, I haven't snacked after dinner in weeks. I don't have these cravings.
Hmm.
And we didn't change anything else. We just kind of added this extra meal to it. And it was just amazing to see that shift. So that's another one. When I kind of said, right, what are the emotional regulation tools you can use, that journaling, stuff like that. Anything else that helps you to cope emotionally. And then the last one is what we call gentle nutrition. So even if you have those moments where you eat because you're emotional and you're not hungry, it happens and it's okay. Don't feel bad about that. That happens. Just kind of see it as a checkpoint and say, okay, what actually happened in the moment? Like, what could I have done different? What would have been a tool I could have used? But don't ever feel bad about, that you ate because you weren't hungry, but, it was related to anything emotional. Is restricting or, you know, getting back down on yourself, getting down on yourself. Here we go. Kind of just increases this food fixation, and that's definitely something you avoid. So just see it as experience, and kind of see how you can shift the next time you're in that situation, and that's it, and that's good.
Yeah. That is something I struggle with too. When I slip up, and I'm using air quotes.
Hmm.
Um, and then the stress response of that alone, because it's like the world's going down, is way worse than someone who, like my husband, will eat a couple of Oreo cookies and say, well, that wasn't the healthiest thing, but that was good. And then it's done. Like, there is no more overthinking about
Right.
this, where I am prone to be like, oh no, I did this, and what now? And now I have to like walk extra amount, like all of this stuff is happening, and now that's a stress response, and that causes stress
Hmm.
hormones, and well, that's not healthy either.
Right. Exactly. Or even kind of like this, if you do eat, it's like, as soon as you notice you're not enjoying it, stop. There's no need to continue. Just again, which I don't know, for you that comes up a lot faster. We're like, no, it doesn't even taste good. I'm like, okay, let me
Hmm.
move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So also considering that and saying, okay, if it doesn't taste good, either get something else, or really get back to step number one and kind of listen, and, hey, what's actually going on? Am I hungry, or what else is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, meditation has helped me with that a lot. To I think it just helps you in general to be more mindful throughout the day,
Yes.
and just be more in your body and be more present, and be not in this, yeah, like doing something on the side here and doing something on the side there. You don't even know what's going on. And by the way, multitasking is a myth. It doesn't work.
It doesn't. I agree.
Just so don't, like, I do this all the time where I'm like, I can listen to a podcast while I eat my lunch. Actually, I can't. I cannot. It seems so simple, but as soon as there's other information, my brain wants to absorb that. I will not be able to absorb the information of how does this taste what is the food that I'm putting in my mouth right now? It doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, that brings us back to the restaurant experience, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, let me just watch a show, browse on Facebook, and then you don't even notice when you took the last bite, and you're like, wait a minute, it's empty. And that's where
Yes.
those moments where I'm like, okay, this is not gonna work. I need to get
Yeah.
back to being more mindful when I eat. like you said, the meditation. So maybe even that would be after you kind of do that halt, and you're like, okay, I'm not hungry. And you're like, okay, let me just take 5 minutes and,
Mhm.
just maybe just breathe a couple of times, or maybe do a little meditation, and then just kind of reevaluate from there, and then keep going with your day.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I had a thought too when you were talking about the meal prep thing and how to kind of like prep your refrigerator to make it more visually appealing and also more in the front. What helped me a huge deal with these things, and I highly recommend it to anyone, not just HSPs, but people who have social anxiety, people who are easily, or whatever it is. Get a subscription for some type of meal or grocery, either pickup or delivery. I know there's so many out there. I have one that I pay a year, and it's free delivery. It is the best thing I've ever done. Because when I am in a state where I don't have that threshold anymore, I am already depleted. To go to the grocery store for me is it's an act of horror. I absolutely loathe it. I do not enjoy grocery shopping. Probably ever, unless maybe it's a nice stroll on the farmer's market where I'm outside and I can like flee the scene.
Right.
I do not like grocery shopping at all. So, first of all, when I click on the groceries on my phone, guess what? I stick to the list because I'm not browsing. There's no big, beautiful packages looking at me and screaming my name. Melina, come on, pick me up. I don't think like, oh, look at this. Yeah, sure. Let's put it. No, no. You're actually saving money because you're strictly doing what you thought you were going to do for the entire week for cooking.
Hmm.
And then I don't have to deal with anyone. I don't have to drive there. It's when I pick it up. Some of those now actually offer to use your bags in your trunk so you don't end up with all those plastic bags.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes it's just going to be delivery. And all those groceries are ending up in front of my front door. And I just have to put them away. And it is such a huge relief to not have that burden. So
Yes.
I just if this is something that irks you and you don't like, this is really it's worth every penny.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I'm glad you mentioned that, right? It's kind of those finding those, I almost want to call them shortcuts. I mean, it's not a shortcut when somebody delivers groceries because you still gotta kind of do that shopping, but in that sense, it's a shortcut. You don't have to leave your house, right? You don't have to have all the stimuli once you walk around in the grocery store. I enjoy grocery shopping, but not in a crowded grocery store or in a gigantic store, right? But I order most of my stuff online, and I just drive there and pick it up because I just can't. So I love that you kind of brought that up too for a little tip. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we live in a world of convenience, so why not take this to our advantage?
Yeah, exactly. So, some good things that came out of COVID for sure. And I think that's one of them, that
Hmm.
grocery pickup or delivery, it just flourished. And I'm so thankful that they continue doing it and offering it.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Yeah. So I know you kind of mentioned also, what are some of those other lifestyle factors, that's
Hmm.
besides the nutrition. So having like a good routine there, of course, is key. As you kind of all could hear through the different things you kind of talked about and how that really can make a difference. But then also, and I'm not sure if you have mentioned that in any of those podcasts before, was kind of like regular exercise, making sure you're getting enough sleep, right? That meditation you mentioned, or just that mindfulness, right? Because that can also help manage the stress and the emotional eating. So it's not just like these other tips, but having that daily routine is so supportive. And then having the social connection, and that's not just with you know getting out and then and meeting with people, but also like maybe as an accountability partner, then it comes to nutrition, right? Where you really share, I don't know if you do that with your husband, like hey, help me, support me when I'm overwhelmed, like with dinner. Can you make sure you help me cook, or can you kind of pull out that meal prep that we have to kind of support that? So bring in those accountability partners in those moments where you're struggling with the nutrition. I wanted to, I know I'm going back and forth, but mentioning that too, kind of, right? Having that communication with your partner, or
Yeah.
even if they notice, oh, I think, you kind of emotional eating, just, helping you, like I said, create that awareness again, just kind of, hey, are you really hungry? We just ate like an hour ago, kind of checking in
Mhm.
with you with that as well, to help for you to, noticing, and then, next time trying to approach that differently and really giving your body what it's actually asking for. So yeah, those are kind of the other lifestyle factors that really can support too. And then, as we're talking about electrolyte earlier, hydration, right, in general is also huge. And we never like put water or hydration with like food and nutrition, but it's a huge part. I talk with all my patients and clients about hydration, because it doesn't fit anywhere else, right? It doesn't go with the exercise. It doesn't go with the social connect. It doesn't go with the mindfulness. It's more like a food thing, but not everybody makes that connection, right? So make sure that you're always well hydrated. That you kind of build a good routine around hydration, because even that can impair mood and focus as well. And just like you mentioned, when you don't take your electrolytes, sometimes how you just feel blah in all areas and can't focus. So that's a huge one too, to make sure to stay aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny about the companion and how you can have like your partner in crime, somebody who supports you. So I had to switch that over to my children, but my children are teenagers now, they understand. But even when they were smaller, that worked a lot better because my husband, I would say, hey, if I start snacking at night, can you please point this out to me and support me? And he will look at me and go, am I suicidal? I am not, and I'm like, what? He goes, I'm not telling my wife not to eat the chocolate on the couch if she wants to eat. I'm like, well, yeah, fair point. I mean, I kind of see where he's coming from. But my kids are, they have, no shame. They have no shame.
Right.
They,
Yeah.
they are so brutally honest. They're like, didn't you say this was bad for you? Are you putting that in your mouth right now, Mom? Yeah, I am. And you're right. I'm putting it back. Watch me here. I'm putting it back, because they are on your case because they enjoy that a little bit too much, I think, when you tell them that. So they are great accountability partners.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Finding the right person for that job, is huge.
Yeah, a regular exercise, absolutely. I see these funny shirts all the time where it's printed on the front like I don't go to the gym for looks. I go to the gym for my mental for my sanity or whatever it says,
Hmm.
or mommy has to go walk the crazy out or whatever, I hear this all the time. It is true. It is true. For me, when it's weightlifting, I have to be mindful. So now the mindfulness gets activated because I
Hmm.
have to form, reps, counting, all of that stuff. So I cannot listen to anything but music when I do that because I will not, I have to focus too much. But walking, my brain starts to go into the deepest crevices and just starts processing, which I need that too because I get get so much information and so many tidbits that if I don't process them, the platform's full, and then we have this like traffic jam almost in my brain where I can't
Yeah.
focus anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so I try to have both so that one pulls me in my body and makes sure I am actually in the moment, and the other one lets me go out and shut it off and just
Hmm.
process. And I walk 4 miles and I come home and it's autopilot. It is so autopilot that I'm like, oh, I'm already home. Oh, I didn't even know. There has been days where I thought, where am I? Oh yeah, okay, I know that street. All right, good. Okay, where I almost got lost in my own neighborhood because I am so gone mentally somewhere else, but it feels good. It's almost meditative.
Yeah. And I wanted to say it's probably the same with the weightlifting too, because you have to focus so much on this one thing, and there's no much else to go in regard to thinking all these other 400 things, that are on your list. And so I feel like that's also very, very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And sleep. Oh my goodness, sleep. So it's so undervalued.
It is. Hmm.
Yeah, I again that capacity that we were talking about, like when I eat crappy food, I don't have that threshold. It's the same with sleep. If I don't get my and I need more sleep than some other people. So the funny thing is I have 4 people in my house. Every one of us has either HSP, ADHD, something going on where we process just in a very different way.
Hmm.
And 2 of us need like an 8 to 9 hour range. And then the other 2 need like 6 to 7 and they're done. They're just naturally done.
Hmm.
And me and my oldest, we need the 8 to 9 hours. And if it's anything less than that, we're just not very good the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, and here's a connection back to nutrition. If you don't sleep enough or you don't sleep well, look at your day. When that happens, and you will know you have a lot more cravings. You don't feel, again, going back to that, satisfied. You'd be a lot more snacky. You might drink more coffee that day, so then that kind of gets you all jiggly, and then you might have kind of that emotional eating. So even though we kind of going away from the nutrition piece a little bit, but exercise, helps with nutrition. The sleep, like I just mentioned, has a connection there too. So we're
Yeah.
not just talking about different, yeah, we're talking about different subjects, but they're all kind of interrelated and connected. So that's why, sleep is so important too, just looking at the nutrition piece of that.
Yeah. And I feel that deeply because when I have a horrible night's sleep, so anything under probably 6.5 hours, that's really bad. And I want to snack all day and not just snack all day. I want to eat carbs all day,
Mhm.
carbs, sugar,
Mhm.
anything that is not protein. Um, it's pretty awful. It's pretty awful.
Yeah, yeah. And again, that's where your body is craving some of those things that it didn't get, but I don't feel necessarily well, it is nutrition related, but it's also like you mentioned, you want the carbs. So your body wants kind of that he's trying to get that
Yeah.
energy, right? That it was kind of not able to get through enough sleep. So it's craving things, and you can't, yeah, satisfy that because you're also not, open to adding that protein, right? Which probably
Yeah.
would help if you go back kind of to that balanced meal. But sometimes you just don't feel it, and you're just like, I can't stomach that. And again, that would be a moment where you say, you know what? This is not a good day, but it's okay because I'm going to make a good effort to get a good night's sleep, and tomorrow is going to look a lot different. So kind of
Yes.
going back to that.
Yeah. Reframing it. I love it. Summarizing the practical tips for anyone listening who has any of the things we just talked about: anxiety, overstimulating, HSP, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So the one thing I mentioned a couple of times, right, was eat the rainbow daily, right? So having lots of variety in your foods you can have. So easy one is, the more color means the more of those brain protective phytonutrients you get, from all those different fruit and vegetables. So that's a good one. The second one is, try to prioritize those omega-3s if you can. So look at if you can have about 2 to 3 servings of those fatty fish per week. It's always good to not just have meat, but also have some fish in your week. So I feel like that's an easy one to integrate. And then ditch those ultra processed foods, right? Because we're looking at a lot of ingredients and additives and stuff like that. And you want to just look at the ones with the fewest ingredients as possible. Yes, there can be some of those faster foods, but if they just have some I don't know, nuts and dates and some berries and stuff, but it's still like a bar, that's okay. I'm talking about RX bars. It's like protein, but they're natural. There's
Yeah.
nothing else added to it because that's a good fast snack if that's something you need.
Yeah.
And then, see if you can add some fermented food daily. And now it's kind of like, okay, don't overthink. because yogurt is one of them, right? And if there's a way you can include yogurt in your day on a daily basis, that's an easy one, but also you can kind of venture out to think about kefir, think about sauerkraut, think about kimchi. But to be honest, I just do yogurt because I don't have to, think out of the box all the time, but I still get my fermented food that way. And
Hmm.
then, like I mentioned, the last one is the hydration, right? Make sure you're well hydrated. Even if it's a day where you don't eat as good as you want to, just keep that water going, or have some carbonated water. Sometimes you want a little
Hmm.
different stuff than just the plain water, or add some lemon to it or lime or whatever, make it interesting, make it fun, or even some tea, some herbal tea or something that you use as iced tea, stuff like that. So kind of experiment with that to stay hydrated and build a good routine around that. So that are some easy quick tips that I don't feel like are too overwhelming and easily be integrated in your day or your week in general.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. That was such a wealth of information and knowledge and just awesome. I'm going to make sure we're getting a lot of that stuff in the show notes for the listeners because it was so great, especially about the supplements and the nutrients and where to get them from and how to, like you said, eat the rainbow. Um,
Yeah.
and it was great having you on the show. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I try to kind of keep it a little concise because there's just so much to talk about with
Hmm.
that. And that's why I felt like, yeah, let's make sure we have some notes for the show notes if some people want to come back to it. And like I said, it was an honor to be here and, kind of help support your listeners. And yeah, just talking about nutrition. I love doing that. So thank you so much.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed. You can give it a thumbs up, you can give it a review, you can share it with somebody you think might resonate with this. Have a great day. See you next time.